continue to join. I'm kicking things off. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Masterclass hosted by Havana in collaboration with Dalberg. I am Rishabh. I'm here with my colleague Shreya to moderate today's session. Mm, We are hosting today's Masterclass as part of Havana Startup India Niti Aayog Game Grand Challenge. If you're a startup who's building in climate, the Grand Challenge offers several benefits, including monetary rewards, mentorship, showcase at the Startup Mahakumbh, which is going to be the biggest startup event with the largest startup gathering. If you want to be a part of the Grand Challenge, click on the application link we will be sharing in the chat. Coming back to the masterclass, the topic for today's discussion is climate finance, exploring key financial instruments for sustainable growth. For scaling new technologies, the importance of alternative funding pools cannot be overstated. The session will help you understand alternative climate finance mechanisms, and as a startup, how can you unlock these funding pools as you scale new novel technologies and first of a kind solutions. Some hygiene checks as we run the session, requesting everyone to stay on mute. If possible, turn on your video. We will try to keep this as interactive as possible. So any questions you have, please keep posting them on the chat. For today's session, we have Jagjeet Sareen, who's a partner and the global climate co-lead at Dalberg Advisors. Thank you so much, Jagjeet, for taking out the time, and over to you.
Thanks, Rashid. Thanks for inviting me to join this inspiring group of people who are actually trying to do magic, the entrepreneurial spirit and the startup level. I know it's Friday evening and you have many better things to do than hear me talk about climate finance. So I'll try to make it as practical, as close to reality as possible, given these things could become very 40,000 feet. As again, Rishabh said, let's make it very interactive. I do have a deck as working in a consulting firm, you always have a deck. So that's ready. I'll maybe bring that deck and slides in as relevant, but let me kind of paint a picture of what I've learned in climate finance and where it could be relevant for you. And let's make it a Greek style. Let's do question and answer. You can pause me anywhere, raise your question, raise your voice, whichever is kinder. And let's have this back and forth so we both learn. So it's a master class both ways. I want to learn from you and perhaps you could learn a bit from me. So let's keep it more interactive both ways. I don't want it to be a monologue in any form or shape. And neither I'm a master of this. But over the last 20 years, I have the good fortune of working at climate finance, the big places where climate finance was conceptualized, agreed, and deployed. What I mean by that, at the UNFCCC, where big billions and trillions were discussed and finally agreed in Copenhagen 2009, and then starting deployed in 2011 on, where Green Climate Fund was agreed. As part of the design team of Green Climate Fund, so I've seen the North-South fund transfer and how it moves and gets deployed. Then I worked with Asian Development Bank and World Bank deploying climate finance, both for mitigation, adaptation, and nature-based solutions. There we used to call it Forest Investment Program, looking at mitigation, adaptation, co-benefits, and where overlapping solutions were there. And then moved to International Solar Alliance, where I ran a grand challenge for solar startups. I started it, and now it seems it's really thriving. Have some sense of how this money flows. So let's pick up a thread that if you're a startup, how you can actually access these big money which people keep talking about in billions. So in my journey, when I've engaged with startups, I say, for you, the climate finance, which is across the borders, like with the World Bank or sitting somewhere in a multilateral institution, it's multi-layered away, and it will take multi-months, if not multi-years, to reach that money. But then why you should bother? You should bother because this is deeply concessional capital, both debt and the grant money that comes along with it. There are structures which do deploy equity, like international financial institutions, and where they invest. But for your purposes, let's take an example, very recent example of Green Climate Fund, which is a multilateral climate finance structure sitting out of Korea with operations working through all the multilateral institutions. SIDBI, the Small Industrial Development Bank of India, submitted a proposal. It took them about 3 years to get that money, but now they have approval of $250 million of debt, concessional debt, plus $16 million of grant capital to deploy through SIDBI network, including the venture funds, on mitigation and adaptation projects in MSME space, including startups. And they're looking at all kind of activities which help mitigate, which help reduce supply chain, the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, energy efficiency, and various other things. But the interesting part there is the adaptation. We haven't cracked the adaptation puzzle yet. What it means by investing in for adaptation and resilience, what is a project? When you talk to people about adaptation project, typically they will talk about wastewater recycling, some ag, some drip irrigation, but I think the space is just increasing. Starting from measuring risk to, what is risk and assessing it, then provisioning for it, then solutions across sectors, and it goes as far as education and climate, health and climate, water, wash, built environment, innovative material, and everything in between. So the way now, if I'm a startup like you, I'll engage with SIDBI and try to tap into this deeply concessional money, climate finance money, which has come from multilateral pot. Again, why to invest in that route? Because the money is deeply concessional. This is the money which could take risk, which could remain patient for a while, and has the mandate to move the market in the solutions where you guys are putting in your entrepreneurial heft and drive and energy. The other instruments which I've seen evolve in the last decade are results-based financing instruments. And there again, they come in tandem with the concessional money. Sometimes they work independent. And let me explain what I mean by it. So typically, results-based financing instrument, where you say, you're paid when you would show the results, it's verified. People are familiar with carbon markets. But now we have evolved from carbon market. We do front-loading contracts, some money for working capital, various forms of carbon market or carbon revenue-linked sustainability bond instruments are there in market. Again, multilaterals issue it, national institutions are issuing it, and now I think in coming years, I hear by 27 or 28, we would have a thriving domestic carbon market. Let's see, it happens by then. But now we have voluntary market, there would be international market as well. Linked to it are other RBF, results-based financing instruments, which are looking for sustainable development benefits, whether these are air quality benefits, health benefits, and various other similar benefits, which one could quantify, and then there is a buyer. These are evolving structures, including plastic credits linked to plastic bonds and all. Essentially, the framework allows you to quantify and then get the results verified, and then there is a buyer. What we are trying to do at R and various other consulting firms are trying to do, that they want to narrow the gap between the concessional capital and the results-based funding, building a capital stack where concessional capital comes in first, and then to bring further interesting waterfalls, you get money paid by these RBFs. So same project will get some concessional capital later. It will also get carbon credit and maybe some benefits, including in that project, if you're maybe talking about waste management, including the plastic credit ones, or health benefits. They're called DALIs, and the price runs into some $100 per unit of that. So essentially what I'm trying to describe here is that beyond the traditional part of knocking the VC route, going, pre-seed, series seed, series A, B, C, or going to bank, putting your collateral, there are structures in India, SIDBI, NABARD, and few others, where, and on the private side, Avana has received money from GCF through SIDBI and now trying to deploy that. Similarly, Tata Clean Tech Capital received money from NABARD, and the money came from Green Climate Fund. There are different layers and institutional arrangements by which the money flows. Given it's deeply concessional, people, want to suffer the pain for this kind of a money, and these international monies are then deployed at a project level through intermediaries. World Bank and ADB and others do provide similar kind of money, which is highly concessional, risk bearing, so that you could do the job which you're good at, bringing solution, blend it with risk capital, and then take it to scale. I put a kind of lot on the table as an intro to kind of just get you excited. I hope we can get started with the question. Let me pause here and maybe invite any of the moderator to start throwing in questions, and let's make it interactive. Rishabh, back to you.
Jagjeet, maybe you can get started. I've asked people to keep posting questions on the chat. We have a set of preset questions that we've also received from the sign up forms.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me just see if I could get hold of these questions. Okay, would you suggest we go to SIDB, taking into consideration the grant loan? Yes, I think especially if you're looking for any adaptation on resilient solutions, this is a new market for solutions in making, and there is international concessional capital which is being brought into Indian ecosystem. There are two big players which are trying to bring that capital, SIDB and NABARD. SIDB in non-agriculture and NABARD in agriculture and other allied sectors. Huge amount of concessional money is being brought in, and they will invest through refinancing route, direct investments, and their venture funds. So definitely you should talk to them. Let me keep going.
Maybe I can curate the questions
Please
and keep,
do. Please
yeah,
do.
keep
Otherwise,
throwing them.
I can't
Yeah,
focus.
yeah.
Please.
One of the questions we have is, what are the key challenges in deploying blended finance in climate action in India? And from an implementation perspective, what are all the key building blocks that are required to get access and deploy this capital?
See, people call all kind of capital blended capital, but in my head, the way I have simplified this is when you could de-risk private capital to some form of a concessional public or philanthropic capital, that should be called blended. But there are various kind of blended, even in the public sector side. Donor deeply concessional money blends with multilateral development bank money, which is a little costlier than that. And that's a blending as well. We used to call it blending all across till this new term of blending came, which is de-risking private capital. And now you have various structures, AIFs included, which are blending various kind of capital, grant and impact capital coming from philanthropies, maybe bilateral donors, mixing it with private capital and looking for different risk and return profile. These things are in the making. Some already exist, others are being programmed, discussed, implemented. I've seen them grow very niche as well and sectoral focus. I still prefer as flexible bag as possible, multi-sector, multi-instrument, so that the ecosystem has the flexibility to tap into various forms of concessional capital. What level of money you're looking, what size, structure, and whether it's a growth capital, all that determines which door you knock. But my observation is that in India, all these are kind of going to bigger scales, whether taking the gift city route or other regulatory environment available, tapping into international money, local money, non-public money, philanthropy money, various kind of money. So climate tech finance is going bigger. We just need to figure out what is our need and which door to knock. We have already seen the public and private banks also getting into this space. There is push by the Reserve Bank of India to these banks to disclose their climate risk, also look for green financing, issue green bonds. So, from a risk and opportunity perspective, regulators are trying to force the financial ecosystem in certain positive direction as far as we are concerned. It seems Ministry of Finance would be putting out the taxonomy, what is mitigation project, what is adaptation project soon enough, I think in coming months. That would again help us, the finance seekers, to tag our projects to certain taxonomies. And that makes easy for financiers to again start tagging, okay, this is what you mean when you say water and adaptation project. This is how the taxonomy defines it. The box is ticked. This is how the benefits can be accounted for. Box is ticked, and you take the money and go for it. So those things are moving. I think, at least in India, despite Trump, whatever, big shadow, we are moving in the right direction, and I don't see any change happening there.
Got it. So I'm just clubbing some questions we have in the chat from Saurabh, Rajeshwari, and a few others. So as a startup founder who's building in this space, who's probably at a seed or a series A stage, they've got some sort of a prototype or an idea going. Who should be the organizations they should be reaching out to? Uh, and for these organizations, that could be SIDBI, NABARD, other
Yeah,
organizations, what should be, how should they sort of build a proposal, and what are the impact metrics, etc., that these organizations look at for giving out grants low cost at?
sure. So, there are three things. When I've worked on similar proposal and fundraising initiative, there are three things I want to be very clear about. One is just the business proposition of it, how you're thinking about this thing becoming commercial and going to scale. Second is, are you making up the climate story, or is this is real climate? How close this is to a real mitigation or adaptation resilience solution. Sometimes people take very adjacent sectors and start calling them with good AI support on storytelling. That only takes you that far. So don't stretch your imagination when you write stories. It has to be that. And third, I would say be little patient when you're going to the government-backed institutions. While the money may be cheaper, SIDBI, NABARDs of the world, it takes a little while. You have to suffer the bureaucracy a bit, but the price is a better price. In terms of various names, the names I know, and I'm not, frankly, a deep kind of network person in all these funders who are at the scale of pre-seed, seed, series A, B. I have dealt with mostly the large funders, but of Climax and Blooms and various such names, they do look at smaller ticket size. But the SIDBIs and NABARDs of the world, through their venture funds, are also looking at smaller ticket size. But again, this space is just growing. You could look at this from a growth mindset perspective. In terms of metrics, again, those three things, whether it would make business sense if it gets invested, how close it is to the climate story, and then their standard, impact metrics. The far you go from this, then you have to start thinking of various innovative ways. Like if you are looking into SDG benefits alongside mitigation benefits, then you have to look at, health impacts, livelihood impacts, and various other things which are adjacent to climate mitigation, adaptation, resilience. But they help you create a bundle of benefits which are quantifiable, verifiable, and then there are buyers for that. And as an investor, if I'm getting money from people who have this boxes to fill or tick, you are better off giving them a sense of how it helps in the overall SDG story. And more people are going towards that. Funders who are raising money through sustainability linked bond, green bonds would all look at these bundle of benefits, which you can help them quantify in your proposal, or at least give them a direction. On adaptation side, it's still tricky to define impact. You still have to give a robust theory of change, but people, more or less, if they buy into the logic, they won't be fussy about the decibel numbers. that how you're quantifying. It's an evolving. On mitigation, we know you can have a calculus to define carbon, and it's a bit easier. Methane, carbon, this, that. In adaptation, the story is a little bit work in progress. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but these are my kind of observations from the field.
Got it. I think just to sort of also take a step back, I think you highlighted some of this earlier in your introduction, but just so that a lot of startups who joined today's session are aware, if you could just highlight to them why I think for a lot of these founders, they're not even aware that you have these low cost equity free grants or debt pools that are available, and there are financial institutions who are available to grant you that provided you are creating the impact. So if you could just shed some light on the importance of, for an early stage startup, the importance of looking at these alternative funding pools.
Sure. So see, essentially these funders which I'm talking about, SIDB, NABARD, and few others, they are approaching donors with also a perspective of market making in sectors which haven't received that money. So if you're talking about renewable, people like, say that it's a bit mature, why do you need concessional money, deeply concessional, long dated, tenure, grant money, and all that. But the further you go into the newer sectors or where the intersection of AI mitigation is happening, I think there is still a lot of interest from various impact investors in looking at the innovation angle. On adaptation and resilience, again, it's a white space. People are looking at all kind of solutions, and there is a lot of grant money coming in. And the strategic context there is that, I don't know if you paid attention, we have missed the 1.5-degree threshold. Now we are past it. People are seeing them globally. We supported 25 largest global foundation last year to look at this issue of how the kind of a needle is moving towards adaptation and resilience funding now. Last year, a lot of analysis, analytics was put out there in terms of taxonomy, in terms of what kind of projects, how you measure impact, with a view that more money will come into adaptation and resilience. There would be a lot of grant money, a lot of patient capital, a lot of impact capital, which puts a premium on various benefits beyond just the commercial benefit. Of course, they will look at commercial benefit, but they also value other benefits in terms of livelihood, gender benefits, indoor air quality, carbon, this, that. So you could build a whole package of kind of a supplementary waterfall of these benefits, which add up to a dollar number. And folks like Leapfrog and various others, they do value these because their LPs also have a matrix which they have to take, which value all these I would say, financial returns. So if I have to go, I will go both with the Leapfrogs of the world and Climax of the world, but also not discount the SIDBI and NABARD. I would knock their doors. And I think increasingly they are getting government mandate to put a lot of money in this. And various guarantee instruments are coming. The scope of guarantee has moved from 100 crore to 200 crore. So a lot of capital will go in these from the government-backed structures as well to startups.
Yeah. So Sasha has a question on what are some of the best practices to access these funding pools, and let me add to that. In your experience, if you have a best-in-class sort of example that you have seen, and the learnings that all of us can draw from a case example that you have seen, or a series of examples on how to tap into these funding pools.
See, I'll give you a non-book kind of tricks. You can get the templates, you can get, best decks, which have got, deals for money and all that. What I would suggest is meet these people with your idea. Talk to them about how you see this first breaking even and then going to scale and the impacts. And, more often than not, I think when you meet these people in person, I'm talking about, SIDBI finance credit officers or regional leads who are sitting and they have the mandate, they have to dispense money. More often than not, I've realized that people are sitting with money, they don't have the pipeline. In the finance world where I come from, we all say there isn't a pipeline. Where should I get this money out? Donors are on my back saying, you haven't dispersed. You're asking for more money. The money is sitting in the bank, getting only interest income. It's not getting deployed while the mandate is deployed. So begin those conversations with your proposal, meet these people, and these one-on-one conversations, explaining to them, I have found in my experience, give you a better return on your effort than writing just emails and waiting for a response. When you deal with government folks or government allied institutions, they are very hesitant to reply on emails because it could be held against them in one form or other. If they write thing which changes, one number they write which changes, policy changes, they are screwed. Talk to them, go meet them, they meet, they talk, and they give you the way. Maybe it's your experience is similar or different, but at least I have found that kind of brings you much more closer in clarity on what they want and what you can get out from your perspective, and then you take the next step and the next step, while you have all the guidance available. You can look at the proposal which got funded and align there and all that. But I put premium on human interaction, direct feedback, improving from there, and showing people what you have built or want to build, taking them to field and all that, are much more powerful than emails waiting for a reply.
I think very helpful to get that perspective. Uh, Jagjeet, Richa, since we have you also, so we know you've done a lot of work with a lot of policy industry stakeholders on advancing the green manufacturing and the clean tech manufacturing. A lot of people here who are also in the ideation stage of looking to understand what they want to build in. If you can throw some light on the six themes that you mentioned and where you see big gaps or big opportunity areas within the clean tech manufacturing.
Jagjeet, do you want to go first?
Sure, maybe I could set some context, but you're maybe the real expert here on these things. So the six sectors we are talking are solar, wind, battery storage, EV, hydrogen, including electrolyzers and various other components, membranes, this, that. And earlier we started with bioenergy, but government has prioritized transmission. Earlier we thought transmission was a horizontal which connects everything, but that's what they've prioritized. Just let's pick solar, through the various production link incentive scheme, approved list of panel manufacturers, or now the domestic content requirement. Government is trying to push both through financial and through non-financial instruments to drive demand and incentivizing manufacturing. But what we have seen is more the module assembly and some people getting into cells, companies which were deploying these assets on the ground, building solar plants. Now they're getting a bit vertically integrated, getting into manufacturing. But the real value is from, when you go up the value chain from cell to polysilicon manufacturing. And these are highly technical processes where a lot of innovation is happening in terms of efficiency. Japan has put in a lot of money in the PSI technology and flexible film, thin film. US has put a lot of money through IRA in that innovation as well, and now they would be looking for scale up opportunities. And if somebody could tie up that here, or various processes, from the diamond wire cutting to various other things, so various gases required, the equipment, various kind of things, even down to, can you create a training academy for people with the skills to manufacture these damn things in India? I think people will be millionaires because we don't have those skills. We don't even have trainers for those skills. So if you could have demo plants, manufacturing demo plants to train people, I think there is a lot of money waiting to be deployed. This government is going to deploy 60,000 crores. Let me repeat this, 60,000 crores for upgradation of our ITIs. Huge money of that would go on manufacturing skills. Could some startups come and say, we can help you deploy this more effectively? We have solutions, just giving you an example. And then list goes on. Richa, you can pick up another sector and give an example how a lot of innovation will come in just to make localization happen.
Yeah. I would actually look at a cross-sectoral sort of a thing as well. So circularity, for instance, it's a pet favorite for me as well, and I see that there's a lot of circularity startups in the group as well. If you keep looking at circularity from a sector standpoint, that I am handling this sort of a waste, that wouldn't help. But if you look at circularity from a standpoint of how battery recycling is being looked at, lithium ion batteries, we don't have raw materials for. India doesn't have mines for the rare earth metals. But if circularity will provide those materials and at least reduce the import dependence that India has on these critical rare earth materials, that's where your story plugs in. That's where your role plugs in. So I would not look at gaps purely in the standpoint of what we're doing. Technology upgradation, big gaps across all sectors. Wind, yes, we have surplus capacity, but we're not able to leverage it because there's a lot of pure gaps, pure generators that we're still importing. So we build nacelles here, we don't build the generators here. So, and it's very easy, especially for early stage startups, to get a download on this. Only you have to do a lot of reading. So there's a lot of publicly available reports, lots and lots of them. And what you need to figure out is maybe pick a sector or pick a cross-cutting theme that interests you. I had picked up circularity when I did my own startup. If you pick up whatever theme interests you, if it's AI, look at what gap can AI plug in these sectors. How is the government looking at it? Usually, policy is a good test of where the government is focusing, because that's where your financial sectors will then follow, and that's where the money will follow, because that's what happened. That's we saw what happened in solar. As we saw what happened in e-mobility. Even a lot of people today think e-mobility is overcrowded in India. There's too many startups, too many players. Not the case. A lot of the startups are currently adding only about 30 to 40% domestic value addition. Can you be an Ather which is trying to build 100% end-to-end vehicle in India? That has a lot more value addition versus any of the other startups. I don't want to name those startups, but there's only 20, 30, 40% addition that they're doing here. So pick a theme, look at all the policy documents that are there on it, look at what the sectors have done till now. There's a lot of think tank reports, there's a lot of reports that have been published by consulting firms like ours and MBBs and so on, which will give you a good 30,000 feet view, which is super helpful. And then you can start drilling down into the details on what you connect with most, what drives you the most. Because if the startup is not passionate about it, you can't scale it up. So make sure you're passionate about the opportunity that you find.
So Richa, Jagjeet, I think so far we've covered what essentially the key funding organizations look at, where the big opportunity areas lie, what are the steps or best practices that a startup should follow. I think a key part of the steps that a startup should apply in the thousand things that a founder needs to do, from building his business, looking at his GTM, getting customers, which are like here and now problems, uh, to take a sort of a bigger picture view of the impact that they are creating. I think, Richard, the example that you mentioned about circularity was a great example, because so you don't just look at your immediate reference of your business, but you look at the larger impact. And I think communicating your impact is a key underlying theme of how you sort of tap into these alternative funding pools. If both of you could just shed some light on how startups should look at impact, and the benefits from looking at impact, and also how they should look at impact from a more holistic perspective, tying into policy and other areas.
See, at least the public financier side and various other funders I'm aware who benefit from public, blended with private and all. Two things before, the way impact is generally defined in the climate community. First, they will look at affordability and scalability. You have to hit those impact parameters first before you get to GHG and resilience and health and various other things. And that story has to be very tight. That logic has to be tight. If you could have a prototype which has all the elements to go to scale, then people will listen to you. And just linking it to the conversation we just had a minute ago, if I had the age on my side and temperament, and if I were a startup player, I would invest my money and effort into the overlap of digital and clean tech, because that co-evolution is just beginning to happen in India. I'll give you one example. The whole semiconductor push, the building the ecosystem, the foundries, at the core of it, as you go up the value chain, the polysilicon, which is the founding element for both of these, that's the same. And people from semiconductor industry are now moving to the clean tech side. They're saying, if we have figured that out, we're going to come here. You look at China, Huawei, its subsidiaries became the cattle. Xiaomi is now into EV. So, the digital company have come into clean tech. Your EV is no more a walking computer you can ride. So, and those are the things coming from drone technology, LiDAR coming to EVs, and the clean tech is the whole grid will be digitized now. Smart grid is essentially, automated grid with AI in every capacity. Now, Nandan has Kenny, he is now driving that whole agenda of bringing digital and transmission together, the whole grid. So the point I'm making is look at that space. If you're coming either from clean tech side or any part of climate story, you could look at digital, or if you're coming from digital side, look at clean tech or climate as an opportunity and look at where the intersections are, where you can take this solution to solve a problem on this side or the other way. And that's where I think billions of dollars, if not tens of billions, would be made in the next 5, 7 years. And mark my word, it's going to happen in India. And startups could play that story of taking a solution, bringing it to scale, and then go to IPO and exit and all that. And it's going to happen here. That's where new unicorns are going to.
I want to add on that affordability point, because as a founder, that's the first thing that comes to your mind, that I can't cut costs any longer. You also it's not always about cutting costs. It's about the right benchmark. What are you comparing your technology to? What would have been the cost saved? Is it a cost, even if it's expensive upfront, but in the long term, it's cost saving, that makes it affordable. If it's expensive for you to produce a particular product, but you can subsidize it through credits, carbon credits, plastic credits, any other credits, that makes it a little bit more affordable. So affordability does not always mean cut costs or cut your profits or eat out of your savings or something. Affordability is a factor of what is the opportunity cost that you're actually saving. What would have been if your solution did not come in, and what are you providing with your solution? And that's where the tech part also comes in, because tech usually cuts down the costs. So the smarter your solution is, the more affordable in that way, and hence the more scalable it will become.
Yeah, I think there was one question in the chat of Avana. So we don't give out equity free grants. We are almost like a traditional VC firm, but focused on climate. But yeah, some of the names that Richa and Jagjeet mentioned, I think they would be the right names to tap into for grants and go personal. Just wanted to address that question since it was there in the chat. Yeah. Another question, Richa, I think you mentioned 68 billion. So the Ramneek wanted to ask, what are the key sectors?
Bloomberg reports, Ramneek. Again, free articles, publicly available articles, Bloomberg reports, estimates. Different folks have different estimates, but one clear resonating fact across all is that India's investments in clean energy transition were the highest in 2024. So in spite of whatever is happening, our investments are steadily and incrementally improving.
I think one very specific question is maybe a framework. I think in terms of livelihoods impacted, or carbon emissions abated, or what should be a framework a startup building in climate should look at across the key themes for looking at impact that they are generating out of business.
Maybe I could begin on this resilience side and then come to the mitigation. So we built an adaptation investment framework for AVPN, the Asia Pacific Venture Philanthropy Network, AVPN. And the theory was that or the framework started with that first you need to kind of through your solution hit on the intersectionality of climate impact in that sector. And we took climate and health as a theme in that to prove the adaptation investment framework and say how is climate worsening, let's say dengue outbreak, expansion of that, malaria, this, that, various other things, or just heat strokes. Are you in your thinking capturing that intersectionality, right? Then what is your solution? How is it addressing the climate attribution part of it? Or are you just, in various solutions, you'll say, okay, my solution is just for heat. Anyway, I will put a climate label, but the climate impact are making it worse in certain peculiar ways. More heat days, very severe, this, that, with humidity or dryness increase. So you need to get that attribution right as you won't tag into the climate money. And then whether your solutions could go to scale and what is the M&E framework, which then helps you improve the whole loop, the attribution, the solution, the scalability, and loop back. And we found various impact investors liking that kind of investment framework, that there is a bit of a learning loop there, and that would help them bring more solutions or refine the solution, which would help in scalability and affordability and the like. On mitigation, I think on carbon, I think we have refined this art. I started my career doing CDM projects, so we know how to monitor, first account, then verify and monetize carbon. We know that. I think plastic we are getting better at with EPR and now plastic credit and bonds. We are getting better at looking how you define that theory of change, measure, first generate, then measure, verify, and then monetize it. On other benefits, I think there are innovative frameworks out there, the health benefits, the air quality benefits. Again, the market is evolving. But as I think Richard was saying, try to create a bit of a stack of this, as many benefits you could bring, and take conservative estimates, create a framework which is a bit simple for people to understand, and they can play with the variables and get to a range which they're comfortable. And that would help you bring your, IRRs better. And this would be additional stack on top of your financial stack. And that, I think there are more and more buyers. Carbon market is going to get better in India. So would be the plastic and recycle. I think more and more guidance, improved guidance is coming on circularity. In clean tech, again, there's a lot of push on circularity and refinement, and they would start putting policy frameworks and dollar value on these benefits. So to my mind, there are enough reasonable frameworks on the mitigation side. On adaptation, these evolving frameworks are good to start with. Define clear theory of change of these alternate stacks, put it on finance, and I think you should be good.
Great. I think we're almost at the end of the hour. So, Jagjeet, Richa, would be great to hear final thoughts from you and any last message that you want to leave with the group.
Maybe I could just summarize what I want to leave you some few ideas. Again, this intersectionality of digital and clean tech, look at that. Adaptation solutions, people are waiting to fund these solutions. So look for intersectionality, any solution you can bring there would help. And try to focus on these, non-financial benefits, which you can first generate, then, verify and then monetize. Don't discount, they bring reasonable amount of money. Sometimes they really change your IRR for better. And do engage with these public financial institutions. It's painful, but the money is good.
I think I would just re-emphasize on the affordability and scalability point that Jagjeet had mentioned. And a lot of the startups start building their own frameworks on everything. It's not always required. So, I'm as precious as a founder's time is maybe see if there's a, widely accepted framework that you can reapply versus building something at your own end. If you do build something at your own end, show it to a non-climate person. And if the non-climate friend understands it, then you can rest assured that the logic is flowing smoothly and people will be able to understand it. If you show it to a climate person, they'll definitely understand it. But you're not always lucky enough to talk to only climate folks. So make sure like a non-climate person is your acid test for every pitch deck, every presentation, every framework that you make, even on climate, because it needs to make sense to them.
Thank you so much, Jagjeet, Richa. I think wonderful session. A lot of takeaways around how startups should look at alternative funding pools, the importance of public financial institutions, development financial institutions, the white spaces in green manufacturing and in clean tech manufacturing in India, even in markets which seemingly seem overcrowded, how you should look at affordability, just the importance of looking at impact holistically. I think a lot of key insights and a lot of amazing takeaways. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.